Okay, we can get started. Welcome everyone to this webinar on climate adaptation, climate resilience in the built environment. My name is Rémi Colombet. I'm the Secretary General at Efficient Buildings Europe. Next slide, please. For those who don't know us, we're the European Association representing manufacturers of products and solutions for energy efficiency in buildings. And today we'll be discussing a very topical subject. We already experienced 2 heat waves in Europe, and the summer is not over. It's definitely due to climate change and is meant to become more and more frequent. And we're seeing that these heat waves have obviously a very negative impact on people's health, on our homes, our schools, our offices, but also on energy prices and affordability of housing and workplaces. We're not prepared for those episodes, but hopefully today we're very lucky to welcome people who have experience in dealing with this and who are both decision makers and technology providers. So next slide, please. We'll have 2 sessions. Next slide, Deborah, please. Yeah, perfect. We'll have 2 sessions. First one looking at the macro level, the policy level, and perspective from the insurers. People literally cannot afford not to look at the impact of climate change. And session 2 will be a more micro-focused session looking at how concretely on the ground cities are adapting and technology providers can push solutions to help us navigate and manage this adaptation question. But before diving into the webinar, just a few rules for housekeeping. We'll have 2 Q&A sessions. First one, after the first 3 presentations, you can already start asking questions in the chat. I'll be bringing all those questions to our speakers, and you'll have a second one just after session 2. So please don't hesitate to shout and share your questions in the box. I'll be animating the discussion. And so we can start. We have a packed agenda for today, and I'll give the floor to Sven Daman from DG Klima to present on climate adaptation and the role of buildings in the EU. Sven, the floor is yours.
Yes, good morning, everybody, and congratulations to Energy Efficient Buildings Europe for organizing this very timely and very topical webinar. As you rightly said, we've just come out of a heat wave, and I read that, for example, in Paris, they had 10,000 excess deaths, and even in Brussels, it was 1,000. So it's really a public health issue as well. I work in a unit in DG Klima dealing with industry decarbonization, but also coordinating DG Klima's contributions to buildings policies. And my colleagues working specifically on adaptation have asked me to step in today, which I do with pleasure. But bear with me if I don't know all the details of this particular file. I would like to, next slide, please, remind us all where we are. This is data from the Earth observation Copernicus, and it shows us that we have just we're heating at a unprecedented rate. The last 3 years have been the hottest ever on record, and there was a press release by the Copernicus service as late as June this year, which reminded us that we have already reached globally 1.37 degrees warming in 25, and are heating at a rate of 0.27 degrees Celsius per decade. And if this continues at the same rate with unmitigated emissions, we can expect to reach 1.5 around 2030. And we should not forget that Europe is heating at twice the global rate. So this is really something that we have to face. Next slide, please. And we must also not forget, as important as adaptation is, it must go hand in hand with the mitigation of climate change. We have to decide today with our investment decisions and our policies what climate our future will see and what the next generations will have to face. And every 10th of a degree makes a big difference. And we should also not believe that we can adapt us out of the climate change if it is unmitigated. And I think this is an important point to bear in mind, that mitigation and adaptation really have to go hand in hand. And a good example are, for example, heat pumps, which at the same time are very energy efficient, decarbonize heating, and also help via their cooling capacities to reduce the heat load in buildings during summer. But another example being, for example, using low carbon construction materials or even carbon storing construction materials in our adaptation efforts. Next slide, please. We have looked in detail into where we are. This is a very recent report by the European Environment Agency titled Overheated and Underprepared, where a broad survey with 27,000 respondents from 27 European countries was made. And here's some key takeaways. So over half of the respondents were quite concerned about extremely high temperatures and wildfires. 1 in 5 respondents did not have any of the household measures protecting them against extreme weather that were listed in the survey. And over 38 of respondents said they could not afford to keep their home adequately cool in summer. And obviously with regional differences, the North is so far less affected than the South. But there are also other problems that like water shortages and flooding risks. Next slide, please. So we definitely see a clear case for having an EU policy in this area. An integrated framework for climate resilience that we plan to table end of this year. It was already announced in the political guidelines for this commission. It's reflected in the mission letters of several commissioners, which again underlines that this is really a horizontal issue that has to be addressed across different policy areas. And we also aim at linking it up with other EU flagship initiatives as it reaches into different areas like food security, water resilience security, but also competitiveness. Next slide, please. So what are the key elements of this legislative proposal that we will be tabling? So let's look at the center line here. First of all, so what is the climate change that we are facing? And to make this clear and have a clear common reference, we will propose a common temperature reference scenario with the trajectories in some regional granularity. That will then lead to European sectoral and national risk assessments. What particular risks are particular regions and countries exposed to, so that they know how to prepare. Then the third block in this center row, allocate the risks clearly to risk owners. We have seen that in past tragic events, in particular, like, for example, Germany, my country, a terrible flood. And afterwards, there was a long discussion who was responsible, who should have warned. So this having a very clear risk ownership, who's in charge for what risks and for preparation and resilience measures, that's a very important element. To enhance readiness and action across sectors. And the philosophy is we have to do climate resilience by design. In every new infrastructure project, in every new construction project, climate resilience has to become an integrative part of it, next to tackling the adaptation challenge of the building stock, obviously. And then the last element, tracking progress. Are member states, are regional authorities, local authorities doing what needs to be done? And lest we forget, every euro invested in adaptation saves multiple euros in damage. Next to these four central elements, there will be digital tools provided, a European climate viewer and navigator, and helping to catalyze local action, and also helping finance and insurance to be mustered for this task. And also we need to think about as horizontal challenges as just resilience. Vulnerable households are particularly exposed to climate change effects. There's also a competitiveness aspect, new business cases, and also we have to work transnationally and have to look at the different sectors. What are their sectoral specific challenges? For example, in Germany, almost all railway traffic was interrupted just in this recent heat wave that we had. So there are definitely sectoral challenges there to be addressed as well. Next slide, please. And yeah, once more here on the challenge to build climate resilience into policy and action. It's on the one hand a horizontal task where we have the EU level proposal, but this is to be proposed with a lot of consideration for the subsidiarity principle to the national level and further to the regional level. But then also we have the thematic policy stack where we have to get every sector to look into what are they to do in terms of making their sector more climate resilient. And again, at the granularity down to the national and the regional level. And this obviously we will strongly support with horizontal commission-wide and Europe-wide actions as mentioned. Next slide, please. So this all will be part of the policy package that we plan to deliver end of this year. There will be a communication explaining the entire context. There will be this legislative proposal that I've mentioned. And then also an impact assessment with summaries of the extensive stakeholder consultation that we have run preparing this proposal. And this digital tool, a European climate viewer, helping to the responsible authorities to look in granularity what are the climate risks they are exposed to. Next slide, please. Yeah, and we've this has been quite a while in the making. Here you see the steps that led to this proposal, and it's really important that we obtained all this rich contributions from many stakeholders, some of which are also in this webinar today, because it's really a common challenge, and we need to get all the input from all the sectors to make it a comprehensive policy. Next slide. Yeah, here once more an overview over the 5 key components of the European integrated framework for climate resilience. I already mentioned in the lower left corner the proposal for a legal framework for climate resilience. But if we turn clockwise in this graph, we also need to have a risk awareness and digital tools for citizens and business empowerment. And as challenging as it all is, there's also there are also many new business cases to be made because there's a lot of space for innovative products and innovative business models in this adaptation challenge. And again, aiming at combining adaptation and mitigation. This is also very much linked to the competitiveness and innovation opportunities. And obviously, financing is a huge part and a huge challenge. We have estimated that we need to invest 70 billion euro per year in adaptation. But again, this saves multiple amounts in damages. So let's make adaptation by default rather than damage by default. And this is the underlying philosophy, deploying resilience by design across sectors and policies. And with this, I thank you very much for your attention, and over to the hosts.
Thank you very much, Sven. And I hear your call to continue and engage with DG Klima on this topic and the development of this framework until the end of this year. So every speaker and every attendee for the webinar should jump on this call and then continue the engagement. Next up, we have Karim Senwan, Director of European and International Affairs at CEREMA. We're also wearing many hats involving global ABC in mission adaptation. So very lucky to have you here as a speaker. Thanks again, and the floor is yours.
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My presentation will be divided into two parts. First of all, I want to introduce you the 10 principles of the effective action from the global ABC and the link between these 10 principles from the global ABC and the national French methodology related to the adaptation for the building sectors. Next slide, please. During the COP26, the Global ABC decided to launch the 10 principles for effective action. The idea is not to propose a new methodology, but to propose some 10 principles to help all the technical staff, all the policymakers to have a very strong and deep methodology based on these 10 principles. What we mean with the 10 principles? First of all, that is for every technical methodology, for every planification of adaptation, you need to include these 10 principles. Urgency, because you need to act now. The stakeholders, very important to have a very global vision with all the stakeholders, including the society, the communities, the policymaker, the private sector, including, for example, financial institutions, public and private, the construction sector, etc., etc. The third point is the process. Consider the adaptation along the entire life cycle of the asset, from the design building phase, the maintenance phase, the renovation phase, etc. This is not only from one just one phase. This is all life cycle of the building sectors. Also, the fourth is the mitigation. It's very important to keep in your mind that this is not two opposite strategy. The mitigation should be in tandem with the adaptation. Very important. The fifth is the data. It's very important to have an access of the qualified data. What we mean about the qualified data? This is the data that it was validated by the international IPCC. This is the data that it's validated by the scientist community. It's very important to have this qualified data to be aligned with the financial institution tools, with the international recommendation, for example. The scale approach, very important, because as you know, the building sector is a multiple level of scale. You could have the building scale, you could have the quarter scale, but also the city scale. Very depend and very important to have this several scale of appreciation and planification and action. The green solution, also we need to promote the nature-based solution, because we know that we have limited to have an access of the raw material. Very important to implement also for example, the gray, some trees, so to reduce, for example, notably for the during the heat wave. This is, the good advantage to find the good balance between the concrete material, for example, and the biomaterial and the nature-based solution. The eighth point, this is the population. Very important to promote a just adaptation on the building sector. The adaptation is not something that is equal to increase the inequality between the poor and the rich, for example. That's why it's something that it could be included inside the very national or local policy strategy to find some solidarity between the poor and the rich, for example, or to find some financial mechanisms or to support for the poor population for the investment of the adaptation process and construction. Finance, this is the key pillar of each action. We know that this is the enabled adaptation for the building center. But what we mean when we speak about finance, this is finance and insurance also. And local, because we know that this is a global warming, this is a global issue, but the answer should be local. Next step, please. In this case, we have decided just after the COP26 to find a way to promote the 10 principle and to onboard the 10 principle in the concrete international certification of the resilience building. That's why the Global ABC and the Alliance HQE, we have decided to propose a common document, a common new framework for the climate change resilience and adaptation for the built area. We match the 10 principle and to see how the 10 principle could be included in very specific framework to certify your building it could be adapted. Notably, this because this certification it's a good document. So to propose if you are looking for investment, if you are looking for some specific advantage with an insurance institution, to have a certification that you prove that your building include a specific tangible action for adaptation. Next slide. And as I mentioned just before during my introduction, very important that the mitigation and adaptation in tandem, but we need to have this vision of the 10 principles of adaptation process during all life cycle of the construction process. Very important during the planning phase, construction phase, maintenance phase. It's a cycle that it could be repeated during the time, and very important to project your cycle in specific scenarios of climate predictive model. Very important. Just keep in your mind this process. Next slide, please. Of course, all these documents could be download in the Global ABC if you have more information, but very important to know that the 10th principle is included inside the Déclaration de Chaillot signed in March 24 by more 75 states. Next slide. Now, how this international proposal, this international advocacy find a very tangible alignment with a national strategy. This is the example of the French with the method of ABCD. First of all, as you know, it was mentioned by the previous speaker about the context of the climate change in Europe, but only in French, we know that we have some predictive model. You know that in French, we try to follow the track number 3, and we include the scenario of +4 degrees, how we could prepare the building sector to be adapted in the context of +4 degrees. Because we know that you have some hazard and some specific risks related to the building sectors. Each hazard has a specific impact for the building sector, as it's mentioned in this slide. For example, you could have for the flood inside and outside the deterioration of activity and shutdown. You could have for the storm and strong wind, building element blown away, damage due to external object, etc., etc. Next slide. The phase of the ABCD methodology, in French, this is Adaptation des bâtiments au climat de demain. In English, Buildings Adaptation to Tomorrow's Climates. 2 points. First, this is real estate risk diagnosis. This is the baseline that we need to have. Framing of diagnosis, exposure analysis, vulnerability analysis, crossing risk analysis, and prioritization. The second pillar is adaptation strategy based on this first point. Selection of action, adaptation logic, reactive, incremental, and transformative. Very important to keep in your mind that very important the adaptation action should be very agile, because you could have some uncertainty of predictive model, and the question is how you could invest with the good investments without you waste your money, with the good solution, without that your solution that you design today could be obsolete for the next decade, for example. That what is very something with the incremental process. And the trajectory and action roadmap, notably aligned with your specific predictive climate scenarios. Next slide, please. Now we need to define the definition of the risk. We have 2 parts, the external parameters and the internal parameters. What we mean about internal parameter. This is a climate parameters with the track level. This is the French reference that we use for the track number 3, for example, with specific national climate indicator validated by the Météo France and the IPCC. And the second point, this is the territory's vulnerability. Very important to have not only in the building scale vision, you need to have a very more large geographical area to have a clear vision about some of the externalities that you could reinforce or mitigate your risk and the level of exposure. For the internal parameters, this is the sensibility, the stakes, and the adaptive capacity. For example, concerning the stake, this is not, you have not the same strategy if your building is a hospital, or if your building is a hotel, or if your building is a domestic houses, you know, because it depends about the uses of your building, and the uses have very stake consequences, very specific. Next slide, please. Now this is the adaptation strategy. First of all, we have in French, a national risk diagnosis, a map of the vulnerability. And what is very important to have this first vision, because you could have some category of the risk and you could prioritize your action, depend on specific stakes, specific issues, and specific capacity to finance. All depend the balance of the national policy strategy and the local policy strategy also. The second point, this is a strategy that you want to propose based on this risk diagnosis, strategy based on the technical solution, organizational solution, notably concerning which governance you need to propose to be very adapted and to have a very proactive action to answer the risk and to answer the risk, and the nature-based solution also for each national and local action for the building sectors. Next slide. Suggested topics for the works. Data analysis at the beginning for identification of available data. Do you remember what I mentioned during my introduction for the 10 principles? This is the same, absolutely aligned. Actors and managing this data, collecting of this data, centralization and accessibility. Very important to be sure that the local stakeholders have an access of this qualified data, and analysis for each climate hazard. And the technical solution, what we mean, this is the identification sheet for each solution, data collection, monitoring, performance, collection of implementation cost, and the cost versus performance analysis. Next slide, please. Thank you very much for your attention, and I am available to answer your question at the end of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very comprehensive presentation, really making the link between what's developed as a framework at the international level and how it's adapted in the national context. Next up, we'll have Florian Weber, Head of European and International Affairs at GDW, the German Insurance Association. And so you'll present a bit how this discussion has an impact for insurers and how they can play also a role in this discussion and inform the policies we have on adaptation. So Florian, thanks a lot for participating. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think you can immediately jump to the next slide. I think we're not keeping us very long here. So as Remy said, first of all, thank you very much for having me and for the opportunity to speak about our side of this coin. My name is Florian Weber. I'm the Head of International Affairs in the EU in GDW, the German Insurance Association. It's across all lines of insurance business, P&C, life, reinsurance. We have about 460 members, and to give you an idea about the total scale, I see there's some numbers already here on this slide. We speak in terms of overall claims and damages, about 25 million claims per year, which are brought to our members. And to put them more into perspective, that's roughly 70,000 per day. So there is a lot going on. It's mainly motor, it's the largest part. And here you've broken it down for natural hazard with 4.4 billion in 2024. There is a split which doesn't seem very natural. It's how we collect data and how data is traditionally collected. So this differentiation between natural hazards, excluding storm and hail, and then storm and hail on top. you don't need to bother yourself with this. We have to say that we see that climate change and the impact on this on private households, buildings, and so on and so forth is not very abstract for us anymore. It's not a policy debate. We see this in our daily work. As mentioned, we see daily claims handling, daily effectiveness. We've seen the heat wave coming through, and I was very happy for Sven to already highlight that. How ready are we? Are we adapted? Can we mitigate the risk? The answer is for a lot of these areas, no. If you look, for example, at my own hometown, Sven was unfortunately pointing to Germany as well. So just another German example. I'm sorry for that. We've seen basically buildings not being able to maintain cooling. We've seen hospitals evacuated to cooling elements only being capable of dealing with temperatures up to 36 degrees. I think last week we learned that we are far beyond that, and we need to be ready. I also like to pick up one important line, which Sven said, we're less affected in the north. Yes and no. I think less affected by the extreme temperatures, yes, but we are also far worse prepared. So, and there's kind of a theme which we could carry through for the next 8 minutes, 7 to 8 minutes, which is if you are less affected yet, you're probably less prepared for the future. And here I would pick up this prevention and adaptation. And what's our role in here? Of course, we provide insurance. That nature make a promise that if something goes wrong, we'll pay out. The problem is 2 points of the equation. If we know that it will go wrong, you can't insure against it because probably your chance is 100%. So it's not an insurance. It's just certainty. And the second part of it is even if we still have the chance, if the impact becomes stronger and stronger, the value of the asset which you are insuring, for example, your house, is affected stronger, so your insurance premium rises, which leads us to a question of economic affordability and is it worth for the individual to insure? So where do we come in? We basically come in to support climate adaptation and mitigation, hopefully before risk materialize, but even if risk materialize, we need to look into this. Next slide, please. So as mentioned on the previous slide, we have 4.4 billion euro in 2024 in natural hazard claims. When we look into what does this impact, we see that we have the frequency increasing and we have the severity increasing of these claims. So we need to clearly see, even without the extreme events like the R flood, which Sven also mentioned, that we are actually on a rising scale in terms of risk mitigation costs, and we need to prepare for that. I was very happy for Karim going through this because you will see that it's quite close. So what do we need? We need to work together across this. We need prevention and adaptation. That means we need better land use. That means we need more resilient buildings. We need better drainage. We need better heat protection. We need proper water management, and we need a stronger infrastructure. That immediately leads to the second point, which is we need public and private investment. Private investment, people caring for their own buildings, for their own well-being is fine, but the impact is very often outside the control of an individual. If you think about floodgates, but also just if you think about measures to cool down surfaces and so on and so forth, that's usually public. Very happy that we can listen to Elizabeth later, who will probably raise all the great projects in Athens. So there's a lot going on there, but we need to get ready. And there we said that less affected, less prepared. So while we see these measures taken in Athens, microforests, cooling gardens, and so on and so forth, we don't see this in the northern part of Europe yet. We're just suffering from the heat in our concrete blocks. So public investments, Sven mentioned €1 invested means multiples and reduced risks. According to our experts, we speak about 5 to 7 euros. And this is a dimension where we can't afford to let this go increase further. What do we do as insurers there? That comes to our business model back. We're usually very long term. So particularly life insurance side, investments are very long-term, but also in some parts of the property and casualty side. So we're speaking about investment horizons, 20, 40, 70 years, makes us a natural partner. We just recently published a study together with the Institut der Wirtschaft Köln, where we looked into the efficiency of investment projects and public-private partnerships. We believe there's a lot to go, particularly on climate adaptation and climate mitigation, because that's where our know-how pays double. So it's not only the investment know-how, it's also the know-how on the side of climate adaptation. So third part, private insurance, that's us. So providing insurance cover to our clients, but also helping them getting ready and reduce risk. In simple adaptation, flood ready doors and windows could be something like cooling materials on the roofs. What does your back garden look like? How does water get into your house? How does water gets out of your house? Also quite interesting question to reduce damages and mitigate risks. So that's get me over to what can we really do. So we can provide data. We've recorded that for quite a while. We have the risk expertise. Many engineers and other experts working in our industry particularly look at natural hazard risk. And we can show the claims experience. That particularly becomes important where we're settling claims. So claims handling periods becoming extremely important. But if you look at particular areas like mentioned before, getting water out of your building, the longer it's in, the worse for your construction. So how do we adjust to that? We publish an annual report. It's just to mention it here because it highlights some of these activities. And one I think particularly interesting for efficient building Europe is renovation. So what happens after a damage, or what happens even without a claim when I renovate houses, buildings, particularly private, but also commercial. So how do we consult with our clients on how to build better? It's not even building back, but if you change your windows, for example, why not go for the flood for the ones preparing you for floods? So this is where we're also very much on air with our clients, but also on the public side. So, for example, public consultations, but also an engagement with communes. Remember Sven's cascade of involvement from Europe to national to local. A lot of this is local, building codes, planning areas, and so on and so forth. So engaging with the local communes and participating in official discussions, very, very important to us. Next step then is this guidance on prevention standards. So what does good prevention look like, and what has a real impact on risk long term? And there we're getting back to the slide from Sven with the today born will probably have to concern themselves with risks up to 2100. What is good today is probably not enough tomorrow. So we need to have what is good the day after tomorrow. And there a lot of our research goes into that. And then finally, it's risk awareness, first of all, in our client contact, but then also through public speaking too. You've seen a lot published broadcasting and communication about flood impact and so on and so forth. On the building side, we see a lot of collaboration and cooperation with associations, with companies, and so on and so forth. Because at the end of the day, what is clear is before a decision is made on a long-term asset, be it commercial or private, we need to make sure that the right information is gathered and considered, and then the decision on the investment is made. Otherwise, we're running into a situation where we're just adding to the spiral. Next slide, please. Then one slide back, please. Not at this thank you yet. I'm going to speak to you. Yeah, there. The integrated framework. Comment a little bit on what Sven said. This is a major step. Very straightforward. I think with the resilience strategy and the climate resilience report in October 2024, the European Commission made a major step in the right direction, because we're all nodding and smiling usually in public policy when we speak about this and all agree, then nothing happens. So we very much welcome the European push across 27 member states, and we hope really that this is picked up in the European Council and we're involved in the European Parliament so that we can make the progress. We're very much looking forward. to the delivery, as Sven called it. This is a major opportunity. This is a major opportunity to bring this up to scale. We have seen that certain investment can be deducted from the stability and growth criteria. We have seen the efforts by the European Commission to make sustainability in terms of building, but also public investments, a criterion for the multi-annual financial framework. That is for us the major next step. If there's no skin in the game for governments and there's not forced action, we do run dry on this side. What do we hope for? Sven mentioned better
Very
risk
quickly,
data.
please, Florian, just to
sorry,
stick to saying.
Sorry. Can quickly go through. Risk data, yes, absolutely. Across Europe, Karim spoke about truck. I want to highlight HORA from Austria, very good. Mandatory risk assessment, also mentioned by Karim. Also, full support. This is important. We need to have a common understanding of where we are. National public-private investment schemes, mentioned before, very important. Risk-based pricing, so the ones who prepares themselves shouldn't be the one penalized paying for the others. We need to make sure that public awareness is there, that people who invest in their own resilience are not paying, not losing out. And then finally, we need to make sure that we don't undermine what is contracted. Karim went through the French screen. We have something existing in German as well. So don't interfere there. Then final say, getting back to that, it's an opportunity. So we hope that public policymakers pick this up and we get ready. Sorry for the bit extra time, Remy. I hope you don't mind, and happy to answer questions later.
No worries. Thanks a lot. I'll call all the speakers from the first session to have their video on. To the audience, don't hesitate to share your questions in the chat. I'll share them with participants. And a first question before the questions come in to Sven. As you mentioned, there's already a framework for buildings to some extent in more from the sort of winter performance perspective, let's say. How do we make sure that when developing as a framework for climate resilience, it fits and it's not developed as a silo away from what we already have on the table to improve buildings performance?
I think this is a very pertinent question indeed, that we have to broaden our view, not only to save energy in winter, but also to save energy in summer. We have made an effort to write it into guidance documents, also under the EPBD. We have also published general adaptation guidance documents, and also in the Levels framework program for sustainable building, it's integrated. But it's a continued effort and a continued challenge, and other actors have to join in, and therefore I'm really grateful for you bringing these speakers together and reminding us of this collective effort. And too many buildings are still built for a climate that may have existed 15 years ago. So we really have to prepare for the future climate.
Thanks a lot. Maybe a question for Karim. You mentioned the case of France and showcasing how the principles that you highlighted can be adapted into a national framework. Do you see other countries advanced in terms of climate adaptation policies? Who can we learn from in this case?
No, I can answer for the other countries. What I know that we in the Global ABC Adaptation Hub, we have made a state of arts because we know that we have a lot of reality and specificity that is very hard to have a national, international document or framework. But what we know, for example, in Morocco, we know that they propose a new specific type of methodology for the building sectors, including the patrimonial building and the current building and the specific type, because between the mountains style and the coastline area, etc., the climate is very specific, and they propose a type of methodology based on the 10 principle. This is one example that we know. And also you could have the building council also that it proposes a specific methodology, but the common point that we have, this is the 10 principle. This is what we need to, this is what's the more important message from my side. They say the 10 principle is very universal approach that you could use in specific methodology or framework. That's why the question for me is not if we find a common or very similar methodology or framework, but if we find 10 principles in each specific methodology or framework,
Thanks. Indeed, granularity is very important in terms of climate zones, in terms of segments of the building stock, which can be very different, and making sure that there is a solution also for heritage building, especially in Europe, would be critical to the success of this mission. I see a couple of questions regarding the use of sort of principle of the ladder for pushing different solutions in the built environment, and if there is a need for a European standardized framework on building resilience by design. I don't know if Sven, Karim want to answer those ones.
Just very quickly, this cooling ladder, I think it's really excellent, and I think that's something that really has to be borne in mind, also to not increase unduly the energy consumption for cooling. So a very good point made. And on the standardization, obviously, it's, as I mentioned, our aspiration to have resilience by design. If a European standard is the right tool, I doubt, because building codes are very regional, and probably rightly so, because we have very different contexts. But it's an interesting question to ask. Yeah, I doubt that standardizations would be or a standard would be a right tool. But my colleagues working on adaptation, they have actually a project ongoing, looking in many different standards and seeing how adaptation is reflected there, and if it shouldn't be more thoroughly reflected in the standards. So this point is taken. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. So adapting the current tools and framework that we have to integrate climate resilience rather than creating new ones. Maybe a last question, because time is running out for Florian this time, to know whether to you the climatrics are properly already reflected in property values, in rents, in this other elements that you're dealing with, and because we've seen lately with EPCs an impact of the efficiency standards on value. Are we factoring already well or not so well the effects of climate resilience in the price signals that we see?
Straightforward question, yes, but it's a yes, but no, it depends to a certain extent from an insurance perspective on how accessible and reliable data can be provided. This is a very fair answer. Go forward. Better data will help us with understanding it better. We understand from some members. So, for example, the member here 2 months ago was speaking about soft measures, right? Sending a positive signal to the market. I mentioned the flood safe windows, for example, where an insurer deducts the excess payment by the customer straightforward if resilience measures have been taken, even without proving that the data is there. And I think that's a positive sign that we can step by step get the data, but also set positive incentives up front. I think that's very important. If I may, Karim mentioned an extremely valuable example before from Morocco. That's the one which there is an example from the last earthquakes, which we shouldn't underestimate. And this is living it through there. The Moroccan government set a strong sign with relocating people who are in extreme risky areas. I think that's something which doesn't too much appear to most European societies, but this runs straight through, right? So this Moroccan approach after the last earthquake is something where you can clearly think someone figured out this is too much. People can't bear it. We need to do something extreme to counter extreme weather events, and that's an interesting one to think of for Europe as well.
Thanks a lot. I'll have to go to the next part of the session just in the interest of time. Our next speaker is Chief Heat Officer in the City of Athens, Elisabeth Bargiani. Thank you very much for being with us today. You provide us with the perspective from the local level. The floor is yours for 8 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Next slide, please. For Athens, the resilience strategy journey has started in 2017 when we issued the strategy, the resilience strategy, and also the climate action plan as an integral part of the strategy, including adaptation and mitigation, and that was revised in 2022 with 61% emissions cut goal, and became more ambitious for climate neutrality in 2030 with our climate city contract. We are one of the emission cities. Next slide, please. The heat has been recognized as the most prominent climate danger in Athens, along with flash floods and droughts. Athens is a very densely built, very densely populated city with few and fragmented green spaces. And from the heat maps that you see, from the heat map analysis, you see the hottest area, and you notice that the hottest areas are those with lack of green spaces and are mostly commonly inhabited with vulnerable communities. Therefore, we've created a strategy that has to do with how to deal with heat, specifically the climate action plans, and it's based on 3 pillars: on awareness, preparedness, and redesign the city. Redesigning has to do with 2 parts again. It has to do with the built environment, with the buildings, and also has to do with the public and open space in the city of Athens. Next slide, please. So what do we do? In the west part of Athens, as you saw in the previous map, which is the most heat vulnerable area, we are creating now a 22 hectares size park in the ancient, it's a post-industrial site in the area of Eleonas, of the ancient olive grove. It's the biggest park It would be the biggest park in the city of Athens, trying to resolve also issues with heat vulnerability and creating more green spaces in that part of the town and in the Western Attica area in general. Next slide, please. We are also we set up a goal of planting of 5,000 trees per year. That's a planting scheme that started in 2024, and we have created a registry and a monitor platform that you can go and visit. So far, we've planted 13,000 trees. Next slide, please. But also we focus on creating more spaces where we have available spaces, such as pocket parks, and also a very interesting project that we do as an EUI project is the Cooling Havens project, where we try to create with nature-based solutions and water in 5 parts of the city of Athens, with stakeholder engagement and the participation of residents, and this will be finalized in 2028. Next slide, please. Recently, we've done the microforest, the first microforest in Greece, in one of the most densely populated neighborhoods in the city of Athens. Next slide, please. But we also focus on how to ventilate the city in a natural way by creating green corridors. In the city center, for example, we finalized the Athenian Great Walk and the Vasilis Olgas Avenue, which has been recently finalized. Next slide, please. But also on the local level, we have prepared tender documents for 3 neighborhood areas that connect other green spaces create using nature-based solutions, 3 avenues. And what's important here is to say that because of the lack of space and the unavailability of space, it's very important for us to see combine the mobility issues with green infrastructure issues. And that's what we do. And that's where policies run down to. Next slide, please. You have some, next one, please. In the metropolitan level, there is a project about creating a big green route, green and blue route on the footprints of the Hadrian Roman aqueduct. That's an interesting project. A lot of municipalities will be involved, and the water that's still running from the Hadrian aqueduct will be also used for irrigating and cleaning purposes of the city. Next slide, please. But you see here, it's an indicative diagram that the emissions of the municipality of Athens come mainly from energy consumption in buildings and street lighting, especially in electricity. Next slide, please. In the last part, you see how great the electricity consumption in buildings in the municipality is, and what's the share on residential and commercial. Next slide, please. The energy consumption, as you see, has not changed that much in the years. We do need major energy upgrades in buildings, and higher electricity and heat consumption belongs to homes and shops, and public buildings constitute a very small part of the consumption. Next slide, please. Next, please. So after an analysis that has been done on the buildings in the area of the city of Athens, we see that almost 48% of the residential homes are using heating oil for heating, and almost 30% has to do with natural gas. Next slide, please. And the number of 75% of the building stock of the municipality of Athens, which is not insulated, is a quite big number. Although there have been projects for energy upgrades, national and locally, there's still a long way to go. These are buildings that are old and buildings built before the regulation of the thermal insulation of buildings in 1981. Next slide, please. We have run programs for companies and enterprises in the historic city center in order to give motives to upgrade the buildings. We call it the Green Athens Toolkit, which is a project that has been finalized. But now we focus on the vulnerable populations, creating the Energy Alleviation Office very recently, 2 years ago. So we have certified energy advisors and mentors, technical support, and tailored energy solutions for households. We've set up 0 municipal fees for energy vulnerable households. We issued the energy benefit card, the 0 cost electricity for 22 years for 4 single parent families, and we also have distributed about 100,000 LED lamps to vulnerable households. We're happy to say that C40 has collaborated with us and gave us technical assistance for certified auditors for our Energy Alleviation Office. Our key achievements have to do with approximately 1,000 households registered, 0 municipal fees for about 200 energy vulnerable households. 350 households have had the energy benefit card, 72% of the beneficiaries of the Energy Alleviation Poverty Office.
One more minute, please. Just to stick to time, if you could conclude in 1 minute.
Oh, what? Okay. Or installations, we have installations of photovoltaic system in schools, targeted cooling intervention in schoolyards, and we also create a citizens energy community. Next. You see the Serafio conflicting complex that we've installed, cool solutions, photovoltaic system and platforms to monitor in real time the consumption and production of energy. We do things about energy, about awareness and training our staff in the city of Athens. We've set up the Energy Academy and we're very proud to present the next slide, please. The digital platform for the municipal energy management with centralized energy data platform for the municipality of Athens, which was developed by the IT company of the city, DAEM, and the National Technical University, and supports data-driven energy planning and decision-making, provides a unified view of municipal energy performance. If you can run down the slides. It has centrally energy dashboard. It's opening the dashboard. The dashboard gives users a clear overview of total energy consumption. You can see the buildings by category, buildings, public buildings, parks and squares, schools. You can search and filter assets by name, category, or district. There's the opportunity to add new buildings and manage existing assets or export data for reporting and analysis, and access any energy bill. It's the centralized energy management for the asset has to do with integration of building and photovoltaic data, energy analytics and consumption forecasting, building level and device level monitoring, monthly utility bill management, real-time monitoring through smart meters. I think if we're running out of time, I will not get into more of this. If you just scroll down the last slide, that would be good. Thank you very much.
That's perfect. Thank you. We'll have a bit of more time for the questions. Thanks a lot for the presentation. It was very clear on how Athens is combining this neighborhood approach with green solutions, transport, but also action on the buildings themselves to act on climate adaptation. I think this is very inspiring, and I'm sure some people will have questions for the Q&A. But before that, we're moving to our next guest speaker, Alex Koshkarov from Somfy, who will present the solutions that are already available to deal with the changing climate. So the floor is yours. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Remy. Good morning, all. My name is Alex Koshkarov. I'm a Commercial Buildings Sales Director, Europe at Somfy. And before I start, big compliments to the municipality of Athens. Indeed, a very impressive plan, especially the greenification of the city. Well done, Elizabeth. So for my part, today I would like to take a very practical stance and talk about the important role dynamic solar shading can play in preventing overheating in buildings. I think it was already mentioned several times, especially by Sven. Thanks, Sven, for these comments. Two things are happening. So Europe is the fastest warming continent. And the second thing, the buildings we are living and studying and getting healthcare and working were mostly designed and built in the previous era. So they are not compliant with the current climate. By the end of the century, summers in Berlin could feel more like Montpellier today, and Montpellier will become Seville. Yet most of our building policies are still focusing on energy savings in the winter. So here we have the paradox. The buildings we are all in are pretty well doing when it comes to winter, but they are increasingly uncomfortable during summers. So what you see on the screen is a typical example of people trying to improvise how to protect their buildings, their homes and schools from the heat waves. So they are using blankets, they are using aluminum foil. Of course, they're using a lot of fans and ventilators. And at the bottom part of the page, the central photo is a photo from a Dutch school that was taken 2 weeks ago during the first heat wave that we experienced this summer. And the teachers asked basically kids to lay on the floor because that was the coolest place in the building. And the next day, some of the schools were closed in the Netherlands. So it's not a marginal issue anymore. It becomes a new norm. It's also a health issue. And we all know that only in France, due to the heat wave that we experienced a couple of weeks ago, we see a rise in terms of death rate. So the current figures are already above 2,000 people. So we need to rethink how we adapt our buildings to the new climate change. So, and here the sequence really matters, and that's what you can see on the top of the slide. So we have 4 measures, which is protect, ventilate, insulate, and cool. So let's start with protecting. This is where dynamic solar shading plays an important role. So we need to block the heat before it reaches the inside of the building. The second measure is ventilation, especially the night ventilation and using of ceiling fans. The third measure is insulation. We still need to insulate the buildings better in order to prevent warm air to come inside the buildings. And last but not least is the cooling. Still, it's not enough only to apply solar shading to really create comfortable places to live and work and study. So cooling and active cooling is still an increasing demand for our reality. Next slide, please. So here a bit of facts and figures. So let's take a typical standard window. When a standard window like that is directly exposed to the sun, the solar heat that is entering the building is roughly equivalent to having a 500-watt electrical heater that is running constantly. In a couple of hours, such a heater can warm up the space by more than 10 degrees. So the most effective solution is not to cool down the space which is already hot, but really to block the heat before it reaches the inside of the building. So this is exactly what dynamic solar shading is doing. In summer, shutters and external blinds and Venetian blinds and screens, they block the sun before it reaches the glass. And because the solar radiation is blocked, buildings can experience up to 80% less solar gain compared to the buildings without solar protection. The result is a much cooler space, and typically the difference is between 4 and 7 degrees Celsius. That means a better comfort for occupants, and compared to the electricity needed to cool the space to such a temperature, it would save us 70% of the energy. In the winter, the function of the solar shading is opposite. So we keep the windows open during the day to let the free energy from sun to heat up the space. And during the night, we keep the shutters and screens closed. And by doing that, we can create an additional insulation layer that keeps the warm air inside of the building. And this is where the automation of solar shading becomes a very crucial point. Instead of leaving it up to the occupants of the building to decide and remember where to close and open the shades, we can apply, and we are applying already actually, dynamic solar shading with automated control that reacts on the weather conditions, on the temperature inside and outside of the building, on the position of the sun, and some other parameters that can be programmed. It ensures the windows are always protected at the moment they need to be protected at the best possible way. Next slide, please.
Just 1 minute to conclude, please.
Thank you, Remy. So very short, a concrete example from real life. It's an adaptation of 15 schools in Poissy, France. As many municipalities, Poissy was looking for a way to adapt the schools in the municipality to the changing weather conditions and to increasing temperatures. So that's why they decided to take 15 schools and equip them with external solar shading, motorized and automated. So, and the results have been remarkable. Compared to the classrooms that have a traditional internal solar shading, not motorized, but manually operated. Indoor temperatures dropped by more than 5 degrees. And the improvement also has a very strong energy performance. So delivering the same level of thermal comfort by cooling the space by 5 degrees would cost the municipality more than 300,000 kilowatt hours per year, which basically equals 200,000 euro of investment. And compared to the initial investment in dynamic solar shading for 15 schools, which equals 800,000 euro, it gives us the payback of the solution of 4 years. And of course, it's a long-lasting performance of the system. So this example shows that effective solar shading is not just a comfort solution, it's also a very cost-effective and energy-effective solution. And while I was showing you the example of the school, of course, a similar approach and similar solutions could be applied for non-residential and residential buildings. That's it for me today. Thank you, and ready to have questions when the session is ending. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I think your presentation made it very clear that there's a need for a combination of solutions, and that there are solutions that are already available today, and we can and should get moving on this. But to go to the next speaker, we'll have Julien Pavy, Special Advisor on European Affairs and Public Affairs France at Grundfos, who will present what Grundfos can deliver also in this field. So Julien, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind invitation. I will briefly present Grundfos, what we do as a pump manufacturer and water specialist, and then move deeper in the solutions we are proposing. So we were founded in 1945. We can move on to the end of the slide, please. So in 1945 in Denmark, now we are 21,000 employees. We produce 15 million pumps a year, which makes us the biggest pump manufacturer in terms of production. And 6% of our revenue is reinvested in the company for growth, because we are owned by a foundation, as many other Danish companies. And this foundation helps us to be independent and invest in the company, grow, and remain independent. Next slide, please. So we, as we are owned by a foundation, we are also seeking to work as an environmental friendly company and find new solutions that are efficient in terms of water efficiency, energy efficiency, and therefore be climate resilient. Next slide, please. So we are EcoVadis Platinum rewarded as the top 1% companies, and we are the first pump manufacturer to have an SBTi target. SBTi was created during COP21 in Paris, and we have very strong objectives. And a big part of the conference will be discussing that by 2030 and by 2050, we need to reduce our scope 3 emissions. And this is then how our pump functions and how they participate to heating or cooling buildings and the energy consumption they lead. Next slide, please. So throughout the world, Grundfos is present in 60 countries. We have 50 factories. One of them is in France. And then we have also service locations. But the idea is that we are present everywhere in the world to bring water solutions. Next slide, please. And we are divided into 4 business units for houses, commercial buildings, the industry, and water utilities. Next slide, please. So for commercial buildings, we are here in, of course, the heating, ventilation, air conditioning, but also the drinking and sanitary hot water. We disinfect water and fire safety. We are present in the district energy, so that's district heating and cooling, also for data centers. In home, it's kind of the same as the commercial buildings, but we do have this also HVAC OEM activity. That's the purpose of our French factory. For the industry, there are 2 levels. There are the pumping solutions for cooling, cleaning, creating steam in industry. And then in water treatment, we try to recycle and help the reuse of treated water in the industrial processes. And then for water utilities, also 2 topics. Local water networks, we are here to catch the water, help making it drinkable, and then treat the wastewater. And in agriculture, that is where we were originally present. We are here for the water catchment, irrigation, watering the livestock. So this is why Grundfos is present on all the aspects of the water cycle. Wherever water is needed, we can bring water and provide it to our customers. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk a bit about our French factory because it's directly linked to what we're going to discuss today in buildings of resilience to climate change. This French factory builds the circulator that is integrated into boilers and heat pumps. And for heat pumps, it has the specific activities as a heat pump needs to function with the smallest amount of hot water that it can create. It has to be as performative as possible. So we produce those heat pumps, and then we produce 80,000 dosing pumps that are essential in industry and water catchment as well. So this means that wherever you are in Europe, it is quite likely that you will drink water through a Grundfos product at some point. And next slide, please. And now we are going to the core of the topic. It's energy and pumping systems. The circulators that you see here, they can help improving hydronic balancing in the circulation of water to optimize the distribution of hot water, but it's the same for cold water. And if we optimize it, then we can lead to energy savings. And next slide, please. Indeed, pumping solutions are very impactful in terms of energy consumption. It's about 20% of the entire electricity that we consume in the world, and it's seen in the life cycle of a pump. The acquisition is a small part, the maintenance is a small part, but it's the energy consumption of a pump because we are driving tons and tons of water, and that requires a lot of energy. Next slide, please.
1 minute to go, Julien.
Yep. So Grundfos has worked on reducing its energy consumption through smarter products. Next slide, please. I'm going to go straight to the two last ones. Yep. So a heat pump needs to have hydronic balancing, which means the same temperature of water goes through every radiator, every terminal points. And that is facilitated via smart pumping solutions that we have at Grundfos. And this helps the heat pump to diminish its electricity consumption by 10 to 30%. Next slide, please. So hydronic balancing, as we can see, is you have different valves that will help directing the water. And what we need is to have the same amount of hot water in every terminal point, whether it's underfloor heating or cooling or radiators that can also diffuse cold water and cold temperatures. And because we have millions of energy-intensive circulators that are not helping this balancing, we are having heat pumps overconsume. And if a heat pump overconsumes, it eventually breaks or it gets prematurely damaged. So what we really need is to improve this system. It's cheap, it's feasible, and it is a direct answer to global change, to climate change, and to our needs of more efficient heating and cooling of buildings. I think that's my last slide, and I would be done here. Yes. And this, of course, it works in homes and bigger buildings for district heating. It works everywhere. Distributing the smart amount of water, it helps diminishing the consumption of the pumps themselves, but also the heat or cooling source by having a smart distribution of water. And this is the core of what I wanted to say and what Grundfos tries to achieve to diminish its Scope 3 emissions and improve climate solutions for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Julien. I think clearly highlighting the benefits both for water consumption, but also for the overall consumption of the energy systems and bringing prices down for everyone. So thanks a lot for highlighting the solutions. Our next speaker is Céline Carré, Public Affairs for Saint-Gobain. And without further ado, Céline, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rémi. Thank you for having me. I wanted to sketch out the work we've been doing with ADOP in Saint-Gobain on the topic and how this is shaping our approach on policy making on the topic of climate resilience and adaptation. So this work, 9 months with ADOP engineering firm, was dedicated to look at climate impact and on buildings and how design for uncertainty is evolving on solutions. So we can move to the next slide. We've been reviewing the kind of chronic and acute hazard affecting buildings, and we need really to bear in mind that both are very much intertwined between the acute shock, the ones that you would typically insure against, which are, floods, storms, wildfire, but also the more chronic stresses. And these are the ones that are hitting Europe at the moment: rising average temperature, water scarcity, shifting humidity patterns. What they degrade performance and they need to be accounted for. And more the climate risks are amplified by those interactions between the hazards. last but not least, buildings should not be taken as a silo, and because they are interconnected with their environment. And then we need to move to having this analysis on both the direct and indirect impact on assets, operations, on people as well, who are in the building, on the environment, and on economics. More and more, the regulatory shifted there, and we need to report notably on the climate risk, like in CSRD, but the strongest driver is financial, with a rising insurance costs, which is so that, and then the asset devaluation and the scrutiny from investor. The next one, so the second part and the work we did with ADOP was about design. Don't see the slide moving, but I go on. We need to understand that the challenge is no longer designing for a fixed climate, but for a range of plausible future. Broadly speaking, we see 3 complementary principles for designing for resilience. First one being the robustness, to enable the building to withstand climate stress, adaptability via control to understand the control interaction with the hazards, and flexibility via modular and upgradable system and monitoring. It's important also to look at to know that there are already a range of multiple design methods based on climate risk assessment via standards with ISO and EN standards, and other elements, including digital tools that are actually helping to undertake design for resilience. It's important to recognize that climate uncertainty is linked also to address those residual risks that cannot be fully designed out, especially in those existing buildings. And on the right, you see a range of actors that needs to be encouraged to better collaborate. Investors, regulators, designers, contractors, owners, tenants, and insurers. They don't have the same information, the same interest. And this is what policy then needs to be encouraging, that their collaboration happens much earlier in the process. On the next slide, this was the third big pillar in the work Saint-Gobain did with ADOP. We've been reviewing a number of key families of solutions, and they both work for mitigation and adaptation, and most of them actually already exist. Climate resilient building envelopes with high performance insulation, thermal mass solution, advanced glazing as well. So both to maintain temperature and improving resistance against events, but also maintain consumption of energy low. Solar protection, passive cooling measures go together, including of solar control glazing and external shading and facade solution. Then we have nature-based solution, reflective and permeable surfaces to reduce local heat accumulation, but also the fifth one, protective and resilient construction system. And then you will include the water, the impact, the fire-resistant materials. So all of them exist. They are, broadly speaking, in our range of solutions, but the report reviews all of them on the market, so not just the Saint-Gobain solutions. Moving on, what does that tell us regarding what to do and what it means for building policies? And here I have 3 main messages for what we need to do next together. So the first one is regarding, so you go on the next slide, that we need to secure a holistic approach. And I take here what it means in terms of Saint-Gobain position, approach on summer comfort. We need to understand where our capacity to act here is, and on summer comfort, it's on materials and construction methods, whereby we remind that we need high performance insulation. And it is in synchronicity with what's happening in the winter. We need to reduce heat requirements in winter and keep home cools during the heat waves. The solar control glazing is important as well. It can help to lower the temperature inside a home by up to 6 degrees, and also defer the moment by which we will need to have active solutions such as airco. That's important to understand this interaction in particular whereby equipment and system will help to maintain comfortable temperature over time and are needed for prolonged heat waves. We promote that holistic approach to renovation. And also what policy needs to drive is that each solution reduces thermal discomfort, each individually, but their combination will make the difference, both for the comfort, for the health of inhabitants, but also for the bills. Next slide, I will go very quickly because of timing for question. So in our work together, and the next point, next to also to the preparation of the resilience framework we heard about with Sven, we need to be together aware about the barriers that prevent solutions which are already there, including which stakeholders are important to take into the debate. So I just named them here. So fragmented planning due to climate scenarios. So this will be helped by what the Commission is going to propose. We know that most of the construction standards are based on historical analysis. The capacity buildings and the appropriation of data and tools is important, especially because we see a number of local authorities progressing well on the topic, but there is a gap between the pioneers and the large numbers of cities that struggle to take ownership of the data. It's not just having raw data, it's just knowing how to translate them into action that matters. We need to also interact with market incentives. Upfront expenditure would typically vary between 5 and 15% of a building value. So we need to integrate that into property valuation, into lending condition, and into insurance premiums, and not forgetting social equalities that will undermine also some of the equitable adaptation we can plan. That needs to be factoring. And then my last slide is about a number of directions that we can prioritize for policy making, so that climate adaptation framework will be essential because it's a shared basis for decision making, allowing for regional adaptation. Second point is to modernize our regulations and renovation policies, with resilience becoming a core performance requirements. We can build on what exists. I was glad that levels was mentioned, but the PBD itself can help. And we know that some member states have captured resilience and adaptation in their national building renovation plans. We need to also see how existing tools can be upgraded, such as energy performance certificates and renovation passports, and at the same time learn from what building labeling schemes and market approach have delivered. We know that HQE, DGNB, LEED, BREEAM already have worked with resilience, and that's been taken on board in the taxonomy. So we need to integrate those learnings with some segment in the market into the policy making. And when it comes to finance, public procurement will be key. We're discussing cohesion money and the future MFF. That can be part of it. We can also integrate that into new European Barrows projects, taking also attention to all of the conditions, social housing, vulnerable communities. This should also be part of affordable housing plan. And last but not least, accelerate the discussion with finance to make sure that property valuation, mortgages, and insurance premium better reflect that resilience. We had, yes, I just wanted to flag that we opened the discussion on this topic on the 7th of May in an event. I plugged the link here, you'll get it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Céline. Indeed, very clear to see that we have a lot of the solutions, but the thinking and the integration of the wealth of data that we already have and the knowledge that we have on climate adaptation, especially from the technical side, is not yet fully integrated in the thinking at the political level, in the discussions, and especially in the policies. And maybe that would be actually my first question to this second panel. And how do you evaluate the response that we've seen? There was sort of a rush in the past few weeks to address these challenges as they rose up the political agenda. How do you evaluate the response and how to answer the legitimate demand to quick actions with a more long-term view on buildings and the integration of this concern around climate adaptation in a real long-term strategy.
That a question to me, Remy?
To you and other speakers.
Yeah,
so
invited to
response,
yeah, invited to put on their camera as well. Yes, I think there is an accelerated need to share existing knowledge. A number of actors have been doing brilliant work to frame and to mimic potential events. So that needs to be embraced to avoid that short-term action reopen silos, or that we take quick actions that would damage the more long-term planning and the work that is already going on in the national building renovation plans, for example.
And we've heard your very clear recommendations at the end for the climate resilience plans, for example, from the Commission. I'd be interested to hear from Julien and Alex if they have recommendations or ideas of what they would want to see in the climate resilience plans from the European Commission.
I think there's the notion of smart cooling. We are talking about, of course, window shutters that are absolutely important in isolation. And in terms of active buildings, we are talking about heat pumps progressing. Well, heat pumps are always reversible and they can always bring cool water. And there are also district cooling devices that exist. The European Commission could push for those solutions. With again of course the concern of smart distribution of the cold water or hot water, whether it's through a heat pump or a district cooling system. And the idea of a planning that comes also with European Union, it can mean funding, it can mean having the global perspective, because whether it's investing in heat pumps or district cooling, it will always require a long-term investment. High investments in terms of district cooling. And this, of course, needs a global overview, the strategy, and a priority that is clearly set from a European level, state level, and local levels as well.
Thanks a lot. Alex?
Thank you, Remy. I basically agree with what Julien and Celine were talking about. It's definitely very important to take different measures into account, both passive, like solar shading, but also active, like active cooling, for example, but also specific, let's say, low E glazing when it's possible to apply in the buildings, both renovation and new build. But what is important, I think, it's the integration of all these measures in one package, because one without others is basically just a partial solving the problem partially. So what is important is to integrate different measures in one very extensive package and to see how it applies to different market, different building codes, etc., etc.
Thanks a lot. And I had a question for Elizabeth. The plan that you presented seems already quite mature. There's obviously a lot to do, but some really good thinking has been done in Athens to address climate adaptation. What advice would you give to other actors that are a bit more, a bit earlier in this process of thinking about climate adaptation? What advice could you share with them?
Well, in general, climate action needs to, a lot of other speakers said that they especially care. They did mention about breaking silos inside the city, and that's really important. The horizontal collaboration between departments and directorates can be very fruitful in order to locate and investigate and analyze the risks and the problems that you have on such horizontal issues like heat and high temperatures in the city. And for us, awareness, preparedness, and redesign, the three basic pillars that we based our heat strategy, this has been proven very useful to be proactive on many levels and in various times. So, for example, awareness and preparedness are now or last year, and it's something that happens in a much quicker smaller time frame, while redesign needs a lot of planning and funding, which is really important in order to address the redesign of and reimagination of your city. So, and of course, the participation of stakeholders. If we talk to external horizontal approach, the local community and the academia and the businesses, you need to be in constant dialogue in order to address these issues.
Thanks a lot. So breaking silos, funding the policy properly, long-term thinking, engaging stakeholders, a lot of good points that can apply also to the design of the climate resilience plan from the European Commission. I'm being conscious of the time. We're arriving at the end of this session. Thanks a lot to all the participants, to our speakers. I've seen that there's some conversation happening also in the chat. Just for everyone to be aware, we'll share the presentations, we'll share the recording in the next couple of days. We encourage you to keep the discussion going. Adaptation Buildings Europe will be continuing to follow this topic and create interactions and connections in the community on this. Thank you very much for attending, and I hope to stay in touch and see you very soon. Thank you.